The message had been broadcast across every known system, a declaration of war so absolute that it sent shockwaves through the entire galactic community. The Corran Dominion, an empire spanning thousands of star systems, had just announced its intent to exterminate humanity. Admiral Rannick of the Corran spoke with his usual arrogance. "You are an infestation, a stain on evolution. Your kind will be erased from existence. The Dominion will make it as if you never existed." The words echoed through space, reaching human colonies, military outposts, and Earth itself. Billions of humans heard that message, and billions clenched their fists in defiance. For most species, such a declaration would have meant surrender. The Corrans had wiped out dozens of civilizations before. Their war fleet was unstoppable, or so they believed. They expected humanity to beg, to fall to their knees. Instead, they got a response. A single video was sent back to the Dominion's high command. The sender was a human soldier, battle-worn, standing in front of the ruined city of New Moscow on the colony world of Grom 4. His armor was scorched, streaked with blood, both human and alien. He had seen what the Corrans had done, and he smiled. "Congratulations," the soldier said, his voice calm, almost amused. "You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species." Then he cut the transmission. The war had begun. The Corran Dominion had gone undefeated for millennia. Their fleets moved like storms across the galaxy, consuming planets, enslaving species, and wiping out those who resisted. But they had never fought humans before, on Grom. For the first true battle of the war was already underway. The Corrans had expected a quick and effortless slaughter. Instead, they found themselves caught in a bloodbath. Major Elias Carter wiped sweat from his brow as he crouched behind a half-destroyed barricade. The streets were littered with Corran bodies, their dark blue blood staining the ruins of New Moscow. The alien warriors had expected to march through the city unchallenged. Instead, they were being torn apart by human resistance fighters using guerrilla tactics, jury-rigged explosives, and sheer unrelenting fury. "Status, Carter?" came the call through his comms. "Still holding, sir," came the reply from Lieutenant Vasquez. Her unit had been holding the western flank, preventing the Corrans from encircling them. "But we need more ammo. Those bastards just keep coming." Carter grimaced. They all knew the reality. Grom 4 was doomed. The Corrans had sent a full invasion force. No help was coming. Earth's fleets were still mobilizing. Their orders were simple: make the Corrans bleed. Hold as long as you can. And if you have to fall back, make sure to leave them a parting gift. Already setting the charges, Vasquez chuckled darkly. Carter turned his attention back to the battlefield. In the distance, Corran war machines rumbled through the city, plasma cannons leveling entire buildings. But the humans didn't fight fair. They struck from the shadows, planted traps, lured the Corrans into ambushes. Every street they took, the enemy paid for in blood. The Corrans thought humanity would be an easy conquest. They were learning otherwise. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. Other civilizations, long cowed by the Corran Dominion, watched in disbelief as these humans, mere upstarts on the galactic stage, fought back. And then something happened that no one had expected. The Dominion's High Council received a report that chilled them to their very cores. The humans had taken a Corran warship. Somehow, against all odds, a small human strike team had infiltrated a Dominion battleship, slaughtered its crew, and hijacked it. No species had ever done that before. For the first time in Corran history, they felt something unfamiliar: fear. The KDS Varric, a Dominion battleship designed for planetary sieges, had been one of the most powerful vessels in the Corran fleet. It was meant to be unstoppable, a symbol of Dominion supremacy. Now, it belonged to humanity. Inside the bridge of the captured warship, Captain Daniel Rohr stood over the command console, his hands still shaking from the sheer insanity of what they'd just pulled off. He glanced around at his team, Marines, engineers, hackers, most still covered in Corran blood. "We actually did it," whispered Lieutenant Harper, her eyes wide. "Damn right we did," Rohr replied. "Now, let's make sure it was worth it." The Corrans had underestimated humanity's adaptability. They thought their ships were too complex, their systems too alien. But humans had spent centuries reverse engineering everything they could get their hands on. The moment they had control of the ship, Harper and her tech team ripped into its systems like scavengers on a fresh kill. Roar turned to his communications officer. "Give me a direct line to Admiral Cassari. Earth needs to hear about this." The transmission was sent in seconds, bouncing through secured human military channels. It didn't take long for a response. The face of Admiral Cassari, leader of Earth's defense fleet, appeared on the main screen. Her normally cold, calculating expression broke for just a second, an emotion between shock and exhilaration flashing across her features. "You're telling me," she said, voice controlled but sharp, "that you've hijacked a Corran battleship?" Roar smirked. "We didn't just hijack it, Admiral. We're about to use it." The Dominion was scrambling. No species had ever stolen one of their ships before. It was an insult, an impossibility. The Corran High Council was in uproar, their arrogant confidence shaken. But humanity wasn't done humiliating them. Instead of fleeing with their prize, Roar and his team turned the Varric against its former masters. As a Corran fleet approached Grom, to reinforce their ground forces, the stolen battleship opened fire. The first ship to go down didn't even raise shields. It never expected one of its own to turn against it. A direct hit from the Varric's forward plasma cannon ripped it apart. The second ship managed to react, but too late. Harper had cracked into the Dominion's fleet security codes, disguising their communications for precious minutes. The enemy hesitated, confused, unsure whether the Varric had been compromised or if this was some kind of trick. That hesitation cost them dearly. The human fleet, now fully mobilized, dropped out of hyperspace, and for the first time in history, a Corran fleet was ambushed. On the ground, Major Carter and his resistance fighters watched as fire rained from the sky. At first, they assumed the worst, more Corran reinforcements. But then Carter's calm crackled to life. "Major, this is Captain Roar aboard the Varric. We're giving these bastards a taste of their own medicine." Carter stared at the sky, watching the once invincible Dominion forces panic. A slow grin spread across his bloodied face. "About damn time," he muttered. The impossible had happened. The Dominion had declared war on humanity. But now, for the first time, they realized their mistake. They hadn't declared war on just another species. They had declared war on the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. And humanity was just getting started. The battle over Grom, for it had been a massacre, but not for humanity. The Corran fleet, once seen as unstoppable, was in ruins. What remained of their warships was retreating, broken and humiliated. On the surface, the last of the Corran ground forces scrambled to evacuate. But Major Carter and his resistance fighters weren't about to let that happen. The humans had spent days suffering under the Corran occupation, watching their cities burn, their people executed. Now it was payback time. Carter stepped over the smoldering corpse of a Corran officer, his rifle still hot from the last burst of gunfire. His comm unit crackled. "Major," came Vasquez's voice. "The last of them are holed up near the spaceport, trying to run." Carter spat on the ground. "Like hell they are." He turned to his fighters, most battered and exhausted, but still standing, still fighting. "They think they can do this to us and just walk away," he growled, his voice filled with pure fury. "They came to our world, killed our people. Now they run? Hell no. We finished this." A chorus of war cries erupted as the humans charged forward. Across the galaxy, word of Grom spread like wildfire. The Corran Dominion, the once invincible empire, had just suffered something unthinkable, a defeat at the hands of an inferior species. For the first time in their history, they weren't the ones erasing civilizations. They were the ones being hunted. The stolen battleship Varric, now fully under human control, wasn't just a trophy. It was a weapon. Roar and his crew were already making modifications, stripping out Corran tech and replacing it with human ingenuity. The first human-operated Dominion warship was about to become something far more dangerous. And then came the transmission that changed everything. Admiral Cassari stood before the United Earth Military Command, her face broadcasted across every colony, outpost, and ship. "This war is no longer about survival," she said, her voice cold and commanding. The Corran Dominion thought they could erase us. The war wasn't just about survival anymore. Standing before the United Earth Military Command, Admiral Kasari's voice rang out across every colony, outpost, and ship. "This war is no longer about survival," she declared, her tone cold and commanding. "The Corran Dominion thought they could erase us." She paused, letting the silence stretch like a blade drawn from its sheath. "They thought we would break." Her eyes burned with something primal, something ancient. They were wrong. A wave of cheers erupted across Earth and every human colony. This wasn't just defense anymore. It was vengeance. The humans weren't simply surviving this war. They were about to win it. Deep within Dominion space, panic gripped the High Council. The chamber that once echoed with calm, calculating authority, was now filled with chaos, fear, and disbelief. This should not have happened. Admiral Rannick slammed his fist on the table, his mandibles flaring in rage. Humans were supposed to be an easy conquest. We underestimated them. One of the warlords growled in agreement. Their ability to adapt, to retaliate, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. And now, another counselor added, his voice heavy with realization. They are coming for us. For the first time in their empire's long history, the Corrans faced something they had never encountered, an enemy that refused to kneel, an enemy that learned from its losses, an enemy that, when pushed to the brink, didn't just survive, it evolved. And the war had only just begun. The first human counteroffensive in Dominion space began with fire and fury. Using the stolen Varric as their spearhead, Earth's forces launched a surgical strike deep into Corran territory. The target? Velrath, a heavily fortified supply world responsible for fueling the Dominion's war machine. A full-scale planetary invasion would have been suicide. Orbital defenses, garrison forces, and an entire fleet guarded the planet. But humans had never fought fair. Instead of launching an invasion, they sent a message. Captain Rohr and his team piloted the Varric straight into the system under false Dominion identification codes. The Corrans, still reeling from their loss at Grom, had no idea what was coming. And then, as the Corran fleet finally realized who was piloting the ship, the humans activated the kill switch. Before the battle, Harper and her tech crew had rigged a Varric to do something no Dominion ship was ever designed to do: detonate his entire fuel core in a controlled chain reaction. Rohr's final transmission to Corran command was simple. "Congratulations," he said, voice filled with dark amusement. "You just lost another planet." The Varric was on a collision course. The explosion was cataclysmic. A stolen Dominion battleship, overloaded with enough plasma fuel to incinerate, a fleet detonated directly over Velrath's main supply hubs. The shock wave crippled the Corran war effort in that sector. Fuel depots were wiped out. Entire supply chains shattered. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting conquests, but no one had ever dared fight them like this. And this was just the beginning. The Corrans weren't just losing ships and planets anymore. They were losing something far worse: their reputation. Across the galaxy, species that had once cowered under Dominion rule began watching closely. If humans could fight back, if they could bleed the unbled, then maybe they weren't alone. Insurgencies began to flare up on Corran-controlled worlds. Slave species that had long accepted their fate started rebelling. Supply lines were sabotaged. Corran patrols were ambushed. Military commanders found themselves hunted in their own territories. The Corrans had ruled by fear. Now, they were the ones afraid. The High Council convened again, their once proud chamber now filled with unease. "We cannot allow this to continue," Admiral Rannick growled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "The humans must be eradicated, all of them." "But how?" a council demanded. "They fight like nothing we've ever seen. They sacrifice ships to take down fleets. They destroy supply chains instead of claiming them. They don't fight for territory, they fight to kill us." The words hung heavy in the chamber. The Corrans had always believed themselves to be the galaxy's apex predators. But now they had awakened something worse. Not prey, not an enemy. A species that, when pushed to the brink, became monstrous. They had awakened humanity. Back on Earth, Admiral Cassari stood in the War Command Center, staring at the holographic battle map of the galaxy. The Dominion still held thousands of worlds. Their fleet still outnumbered humanity's forces 100 to 1. But now, the war wasn't about numbers. It was about strategy, about fear. Cassari turned to her officers. "We don't need to defeat the Dominion in open war," she said. "We just need to break them." A new plan was forming. A war not of territory, but of annihilation, of their supply chains, of their command structure, of their very belief in their own power. "We take it all," she said, looking at the officers around her. "The deadliest strategist humanity had ever produced. Let's show them what happens when you declare war on the deadliest species in the galaxy." The war was no longer about survival. It was about dominance. And humanity was just getting started. The Koran homeworld was a fortress, the heart of an empire that had ruled unchallenged for centuries. No species had ever dared strike at it. Until now, humanity wasn't just fighting a war anymore. It was delivering a message. Earth's military command had devised a strategy so audacious, so completely insane, that no Koran admiral would ever have expected it. Instead of slowly grinding through the Dominion's outer defenses, the humans were going to cut off the head of the beast. The plan was simple. Hit the Koran homeworld so hard, so violently, that their entire empire collapses in fear. Operation Executioner had begun. A small fleet of human stealth ships slipped past the Dominion's outer patrols. The Korans had spent decades preparing for invasions, not assassinations. Their defenses were built to fight massive armadas, not a few carefully placed human operatives. Among them was Captain Roar, the man who had stolen the Varric. Now, he was leading a new mission, one even more suicidal. The plan: get in, cause chaos, and get out. Roar and his team infiltrated the outer space stations orbiting the Koran homeworld, planting detonations along key defense grids. The humans had figured out something no other species had before them. The Dominion's technology was powerful, but not invincible. Their power grids, their supply networks, all vulnerable. The detonations were synchronized. A single command was sent. Boom. In an instant, half of the Koran planetary defenses went dark. And that's when the real attack began. The Korans expected an invasion. They expected fleets, soldiers, ground battles. What they got instead was annihilation. The first human strike forced inland. They bombed. Human warships, smaller and faster than Dominion battlecruisers, launched planet-cracking railgun rounds at key infrastructure sites. Military installations vanished. Supply hubs turned to dust. The Koran command structure was in chaos. Generals screamed orders that no one could follow. Warships scrambled to launch, only to be shot down before they left the atmosphere. The humans weren't fighting for territory. They were dismantling an empire, and the Korans had no idea how to stop them. Deep inside the palace of the Koran Emperor, the once mighty ruler of the Dominion stared at the holophedes in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives. They are weak." A nearby officer trembled. "My lord, the humans have the door." Smoke and fire exploded into the chamber as Roar and his team stormed in. Human soldiers, covered in blood and battle scars, leveled their weapons at the most feared leader in the galaxy. Roar stepped forward, his face unreadable. "You declared war on humanity," he said coldly. The Emperor, once so arrogant, so untouchable, now cowered before them. Roar raised his pistol. Big mistake. One shot. The Koran Emperor was dead. Across the Dominion, the news spread like wildfire. The Emperor was dead. Their home world was in ruins. Their fleets were broken. Without leadership, without fear keeping them in line, the Dominion began to fall apart. And the humans didn't stop. Months later, on a ruined Dominion world, Admiral Cassari stood among the wreckage of what was once the greatest empire in the galaxy. A war that should have lasted centuries had been won in months. She looked at the gathered human soldiers, faces worn but victorious. "They thought they were the apex predators," she said. She turned, looking at the burning remnants of the Dominion. They were wrong. For the first time in history, the galaxy had a new ruler, and the humans, they weren't conquerors. They were hunters. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear. Now, humanity had taken their place. Some civilizations celebrated their arrival. Others trembled. Because the galaxy had learned a terrifying truth. You don't declare war on humanity. Because if you do, you don't get a war. You get extinction.